Hi, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter from Sports Illustrated's Fan Nation Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. It's great to be with you today. I want to thank you for taking time. This is super, super early, but appreciate you joining us on the broadcast. And we're going to go through a lot of information today. I want to start, though, with something that's important to me as an individual. And that is yesterday, my wife made her first appearance on the podcast, and y'all were so kind to her. In fact, so kind that certain people part of the organization were sending us comments that people made, and I don't know who the person is. I haven't gone through all the comments, but somebody said the Chiefs have Taylor Swift and we've got Shannon Carpenter. I'll tell you, that went through. Several people in the organization sent that to us, and I just thought that was really funny and really kind of you. I appreciate all of you. My wife is a tremendous gift from the Lord to our family. She is a very accomplished nurse. She has saved numerous lives where her bosses and doctors have flat said that. And she's so dedicated to her craft. She has such compassion for people. And she's just a great mom. She's a terrific wife, an awesome nurse, and just one of the finest people in the world that I've ever met. And when you are married to a spouse that just loves the Lord and loves her family and is just a woman of integrity, who wouldn't want to brag about their bride like that and beautiful inside and out? So I just wanted to personally say to you guys, I was not too excited about doing that because I know how people are, and 99% of people are great. But that 1% can be pretty nasty. And I just decided, okay, I'll just protect her from it. And but she wanted to comment about those socks. So, anyways, thank you all for being so kind. A lot to cover today, a ton of information to disseminate to you. I'd like to start. Let me just tell you, we're going to talk about the quarterback position, what I think's going to happen. Not what I think's going to happen, but what are the options for the Raiders at quarterback that are being looked at, because they're looking at everything. We're going to look at Dan Campbell and Antonio Pierce because there are a lot of similarities, and we're going to talk about those and what are some things that AP is doing different outside of the similarities that I think are going to help him more than maybe Dan Campbell's been helped. We're going to also take a look at competition on this roster, some things that I heard yesterday that I think will be really good for you. But let's start with the offensive coordinator. I told you yesterday, and I've told you before, I expect the Raiders offensive coordinator position to be done today, tomorrow, Wednesday at the latest. I'm going to tell you this. I would be a little surprised if the roster isn't done by Wednesday. Maybe have one spot open or whatever, or somebody that they know they're going to bring in, but it's close. And then when it is, we are actually going to do a podcast on each coach, breaking down each coach. What's their strengths? What's their weaknesses? What's their resume? On some of them, we may even bring in some experts who are very familiar with their career path. So by time, we are going to really dig in on the Raiders staff. You guys are going to have what I believe is the most knowledgeable that you've ever been on a Raider staff. When I inherited and came in with John Gruden's staff, this is my 5th season. We didn't do as much as a deep dive on them like we will. We did quite a bit, but not like we have. Josh McDaniels' time, we did some. There were some weak points on Josh's staff and whatever. But this one, we're going to dig very, very deep. I was told by someone who has known or not, I'm not going to come in covering the Raiders for only 5 years and pretend like I have enough institutional knowledge to go back to the 60s with Al Davis. I don't. And so I am more than willing to say, within my time or within X amount of years. But I was talking to someone who has the institutional knowledge that we were discussing kind of where AP's going with his staff, what's happening. And he told me, I mean, I told him this is setting up to be one of the best staffs of the 5 years that I've been here, if not the best. I think it could be. There's a couple of guys I'm waiting to see if they're able to land. And he agreed with me. So he is a person that has the institutional knowledge, having covered the team. So we're going to really dig in on this staff. I think that's really important. This is a new era of Raider football. And I told someone the other, I think it was last night, may have been 2 days ago, but on an airplane, I said, listen, this is a new era of Raider football, and it's an era of going back to Raider football. They're going back and attacking the game and approaching the game of football like it used to be. Previously, when this was a franchise that put fear into the minds of other teams. The Raiders know that they're not going to go out and win 17 games. It's nearly an impossible feat to do. Someone will do it eventually, but it's nearly impossible. But what you want is 2 or 3 weeks after you've played the Raiders want you to still feel it. And they're putting together a staff of master technicians, tremendous teachers of the game, men who understand the game, but men who also come with great relationships. That's very important to Antonio Pierce. Now, if you're a coach with a very high standard, Nick Saban is famous for saying this: mediocre people don't like high achievers, and high achievers don't like mediocre people. It should not be ironic to you that everywhere Antonio Pierce played, he was endeared himself to the head coach. Now, it wasn't because he was a brown noser. He endeared himself to the head coach because he played at a standard, because he played at such a level that made other people around him better. You've heard me tell the story. Irvin Johnson, I'm from Michigan and knew his family. So for you, it's magic. But Irvin told me one time, I asked Irvin, I said, tell me what's the difference between a good and a great player? Because Irvin's great. And he said to me, you can't be a great player if you're not a good player. But the difference is a great player is a good player who makes others around him better. That's a brilliant point. Okay. So when we look at this staff, AP is making a conscientious effort. I want tacticians, but I want guys that are able to build relationship. Now, there's some people who are no longer with this team, and not all of them, by the way, who could not build relationships with players. Players just did not like them. And I've been asked not to bury anyone, so I'm not going to do it. They're not here. You can all probably figure out who I'm talking about, but it's irrelevant. So I will honor the request made of me and not bury anyone. All right. But there are some guys that just are so overbearing, so whatever. They don't have the ability to build relationships with people. Then there are some guys that come in, are tacticians. They want it done one way. This is how you're going to do it. I'm the coach. I'm going to teach you. I'm going to give you every resource. I'm going to get to know you. I'm going to do everything to help you be successful. But if you're lazy and you're not going to put any effort in, no. That's what AP wants. He doesn't want butt kissers on his staff. He doesn't want them on his roster either. He wants guys that are relationship builders, but you got to build them with the right people. Nick Saban was fond of saying, if you are allowing it, you're coaching it. So he wants tacticians. Remember, I shared with you the story about AP when he was with the Giants when they beat Brady's 17-0 Patriots. Breaking down film, saw some tendencies, goes to his coaches. I've had members of that team Tell me. Devin Thomas, the great wide receiver, is a very good friend of mine. But others, Devin Thomas told me, I'm on offense, he's on defense. We wouldn't have won that game without AP. And he wants those kinds of guys. Okay. So Kubiak is one of the coaches for San Francisco. He's a guy that the Raiders were interested in for offensive coordinator. I don't know where he sits on that process. I don't know if the Raiders are like, okay, we're willing to, they've already put a slip in to interview him. They want to interview him. I don't know where he stands on the rankings, to be very frank with you. I don't, at the last time that I spoke with someone with direct knowledge of the situation, they didn't know who's number one on their list. They really didn't. It was, I've told you this before, it was, hey, who's AP going to fall in love with? He's asking very tough questions of every candidate for the OC job. He is looking for a particular person. Now, go back to Patrick Graham. When he was with the Patriots, many people thought this guy's a head coach candidate. Then he goes to the Giants with a terrible head coach, and he looked terrible. So if you're not a person who has a football acumen and a high football IQ, you would have said, why are you hiring Patrick Graham? And a lot of people did. I remember, you can go back and look. This is what I love about the digital age. When the Raiders hired Patrick Graham from the New England Patriots, I said, this is a guy that should be a head coach. He just worked for a moron in New York. And I got killed by it. Had a lot of people. That's where I talk about the 1% in the comment section. You don't know what you're talking about. You're just being a shill for Josh McDaniels. Okay, amazing. You report the truth and you're a shill. That's a problem in our country right now. Nobody listens to anybody. If you're not of my tribe, and then it gets from tribe to my opinion. Anyways, after his first year here in Vegas, a lot of people wanted him gone. I said, listen, this is a good thing that he's back with the Raiders. Took a ton of grief for it last year. Now nobody wants him to go. Absolutely true. Nobody wants him to go. And as I've reported all along, if he doesn't get a head coach job, he will be back. But AP understands you can be a really, really good coach on a very, very bad staff where the head coach doesn't, in the old words, release the hounds and let you go do what you want to do. If you're a position coach and you work for a coordinator and he says, this is how I want that taught, okay, you're going to teach it the way your boss wants it. How many of you have ever had a job and thought, man, I can think of ways that we can do this better, but my boss wants it done this way? Now, AP also wants guys who will go to his coordinators and say, I think we can do this better. And they'll listen. And if they say no, then he's good with that. But he wants them to listen. And good leaders do that. Now, so he's looking at a bunch of different guys. I mentioned yesterday, and I'll mention again because our viewership numbers are much higher on a weekday, Monday through Thursday, than they are on the weekend. But there is one head coach that is out there that if AP doesn't find what he's looking for, he will talk to and interview. A very successful, a good head coach. I could give you a name because I believe I know who it is, but I am not. I got the name from somebody that I believe is truthful, but they're a kind of a news source. And so since I haven't had a chance to prove them out over time, I'm going to wait before I give that name. But I believe I do know the name. I think the person's honorable and knows. But I think AP is waiting for someone to earn the job from him. And I think that's smart. I think he is listening to everybody. He's brought some guys in. I've seen fans, not him. AP doesn't know what he's doing. Well, those are the same people that said Colton Miller was a bad draft pick. Those are the same people that said Patrick Graham was a bad choice. There are some people that don't have the maybe it's the maturity or the football understanding to know that everybody comes from certain situations. I think they know that. I mean, that most of us know that. So he's sitting down with guys. He's asking very, very tough questions. If they are guys that have some failure in the background, why? Why did that happen? What would you have done differently? Or what did you learn? Sometimes bad things happen to us because we're stupid. I've had bad things happen to me because I'm stupid. You have too. Or you've never done anything. You've sat at home in your mom's basement with your girlfriend whose last name is .jpeg wrapped in bubble wrap. But most people have gone out and done something. And Theodore Roosevelt had a great speech that he gave about the man in the arena. You're going to have people your whole life are going to criticize you, but you're the one in the arena. Remember that. I tell that to young journalists all the time when I speak to young journalists. What do you learn? You're the one in the arena. Everyone is going to critique you. But remember, they're critiquing you from outside the arena. They're buying a ticket to critique you. You're in the arena. That's worth something. Same thing in your life. Many of you have taken chances and you failed because that's part of taking chances. But guess what? You were in the arena. I don't care about people's failures. I really don't. And I think successful people are that way. I don't look at people's failures. Did you learn from it? Okay, what'd you learn? Great. Let's just keep moving forward. People that revel in others' failures are people who are never successful. Because successful people don't have time to look at your failures. You know why? I'm looking at mine. I always laugh at people that want to point fingers, talk about other people, point out other people's failures. Go right ahead. Okay, you know what? Because while you still live in that mud, successful people have moved on. Just on. Because they understand you only get one life. I only get one life. How many times do you know people who are stuck in a failure 20 years ago? I run into it all the time with fans. Well, 25 years ago, we were good. And, it was good times. Okay. But you got years of your life left. What about being good in the end? Don't revel. I'll never forget this. And I don't have his permission to tell the story. I don't think he would mind, but because I don't have his permission, I'm going to hold back. But there was a very, very famous football player who retired after a Super Bowl. He was a very successful player. And I'll never forget him telling me, he said, I don't want this to be the zenith of my life. And I'm still in my 30s. I want to be able to I live a long time and I want to have more successes. And I think that that's the approach that AP has taken with his life. It's a sign of character. It's a sign of integrity. And it's amazing how many people were whispering or tweeting things about Antonio Pierce. But he got the job. Why? Because he's like, yep, okay, mistakes, or yep, that's behind me. Let's go. Let's keep moving forward. He's never stopped moving forward. The best running backs. I learned this from Nick Saban. I asked him one time about recruiting running backs. And he says, a lot of guys will look at your 40 speed and want to see all your highlights. He goes, all right, you're coming from high school. If you're fast, you should have been able to run past a ton of people. But what I want to watch is what happens when you got two or three guys on you. Do you go backwards? Or when you're getting tackled, do you fall forward? I thought, man, that is brilliant. He goes, I want people that are falling forward. That way we're not losing yards. He goes, hey, I understand. There's going to be times you run the ball in 1st and 10 and you only get 1 yard. Because, but guess what? That's usually my guy who's falling forward. I want guys. And so that is what the mindset of AP is. I see a lot of people acting like they're panicking that there hasn't been an OC. There's literally nothing to panic about. He has got a terrific group of guys that want the job. Do I favor some more than others? I do. And I think when he learns about them, he will too. But he's also got some guys that he knows that are out there that he can go talk to and who are very, very good. AP, when you find guys who put staffs together, and it's like anything, you'll see guys who put together a very inexperienced staff, and that's okay when you're a guy like an Andy Reid. That's okay when you're a guy like a Bill Belichick. That's okay when you're a coach with a Sean Payton. That's okay because you know what you know, and you're able to disseminate that information to those coaches and coach them. Well, when you're a young coach and one who's primarily just been a defensive guy, now remember, AP is not just a defensive coach. He has a very intuitive offensive mind. He was able to read offenses and he knows what's difficult for him. And that's where Patrick Graham is an invaluable asset to him. All right. So then he's going to look and say, okay, do we have anybody on AP staff that's learning from AP? It's called the Timothy principle. And not preaching at you. But there's a principle in the Bible where Paul, who most people, even if you're not a Jesus follower, know who Paul is, the Apostle Paul, trained a young boy named Timothy to be able to take his place, to be able to grow one day when Paul was done. And it's called the Timothy principle. It's used in businesses everywhere and called that. Even in a non-Christian places, it's still used and called, where you're training someone to really learn how you do things. And Antonio Pierce was a sponge who learned a lot from AP and AP from him. That's where their bond is so very, very close. But he's looking for, because he's not Andy Reid, he's not Sean Payton, he's not Bill Belichick, he's Antonio Pierce, and he's not going to try to pretend he's those. He's bringing in great guys. I mean, he brings in a Tom McCaughlin as a senior advisor. Marvin Lewis is going to be part of his staff. Why is he bringing in those guys? Because he's not intimidated at all. He knows if I do my job, I keep my job. If I don't do my job, I get fired. So why am I worried about who the interim coach is? Just do your job and you'll keep your job. I think that's a huge deal with Antonio Pierce. Now, so I think the offensive coordinator is going to be fine. I still expect it could be today, Tuesday, Wednesday at the very latest, and not because there's a sense of urgency, unless they just make the decision, hey, we can't make the hire till we talk to Kubiak. Okay. Do I see that happening? No. Is it a potential? Yes. But I don't see it happening. All right, let's keep going here. I got a lot I want to talk to you about. Let's talk about Aiden O'Connell. Aiden is very aware that there's going to be a competition next year with him. Now, that does not faze him. He expects it and he welcomes it. Last year, I don't know how close of attention you played, but after Jimmy Garoppolo got benched, he became Aiden O'Connell's biggest cheerleader. Jimmy believes, and I agree with him, by the way, his career is not over in the National Football League. There will be a team that wants Jimmy and wants him to play. He's completely healthy. He's a good quarterback now. And by now, I'm meaning when he's healthy. I don't think anybody is going to judge him by the first games of Josh McDaniels. For the same reason I talked about, you don't go judge other coaches by some of their failures, like Patrick Graham. But Aiden understands competition. Aiden understands I'm getting a paycheck from the Las Vegas Raiders, and Aiden understands I want the Las Vegas Raiders to win. He saw Jimmy Garoppolo when he got benched become his biggest fan. He saw Brian Hoyer, same way. So Aiden O'Connell not only expects a competition, he knows that, he's been told that, he's aware of it, but he also embraces it because he wants the Las Vegas Raiders to be successful. And so does he think he's the one that can do it? Of course he does. Do you want a quarterback who doesn't feel that way? But he also knows I want us to be successful, so let's get somebody in here. Let's have a competition. Let's make it as tough as we can because we want this team to go as far as they can. So I've had a lot of people ask me, do you think it hurts him mentally? No. Aiden O'Connell, I'm going to share a couple things, and I know him pretty well. Like him, have a great relationship with him. Let me just say this to you about Aiden O'Connell. First of all, I really like the kid. And if you don't like him, I would suspect that the problem is you and not him. He's extremely likable. He became the starting quarterback, and he still was the humble kid that was very deferent to his veterans, and the team genuinely really loved him. I laughed one time when Davante Adams comes out and talks about how much he likes him. Oh, what's he supposed to say? You know, you do realize when you say that about players that you're calling them liars. And I don't know how you can be a fan of a guy and then call him a liar. I'm going to tell you something, and maybe you do not have the mental ability to see this, but adults have a way of answering questions and not saying more than they feel. Okay. So, for example, there was a former coach on this staff that I thought was a terrible coach before he got here. I was stunned that they hired him and told them that, by the way, very beginning. Why did you hire him? He's terrible. And I know the reasons, and I won't get into it. Okay. So I gave him the benefit of a doubt, then began to hear the same things I've heard everywhere else. And I tried to ask him about it and give him a chance to break away from it. Oh, no. Stay true to himself. And I don't have to name names. I don't have to trash people. Just it is what it is. And these guys know how to answer questions. And when you say to AP, hey, what do you think of Aiden O'Connell? Oh, he's a good kid, works hard. I really admire his work ethic. I admire the fact that he comes in here and he's a starting quarterback in the NFL as a true rookie, and he's not arrogant. I like the fact that he listens to us. Okay. That's how you answer a question about a guy that you don't think has long-term viability in the NFL. You don't have to throw him under the bus. And by the way, Davante wouldn't. He's a pro. But Davante comes out, man, I like him. I believe in his skill set. He can quarterback in the. Oh, what's he supposed to say? Well, he's not supposed to say that if he doesn't believe it. And I'm going to tell you, I'll stand here and defend Davante Adams and Max Crosby and several of these veteran players who are men of integrity. And you can sit there in your base and say, what is he supposed to say? Because you just look at life negatively. That's cool. That's cool. That's cool. That's your perspective. But I'm telling you, they believe in him. And he believes in himself. But he also knows I'm going to be better with competition. I'm going to be better with competition. So he knows that competition's coming. And I had several of you ask me, do you think that concerns him? And the answer is no, not at all. Now, listen, I've known some quarterbacks, rookies, who I think competition frazzled them. They spent a lot of time looking over their back. Now, Nick Saban, and I know I mentioned Nick a lot, but I have tremendous respect for him, used to say when he was looking for coaches, I would rather have, talk about at the college level, great recruiters who are good coaches rather than good coaches who are, I'd rather have great recruiters who are good coaches rather than good coaches who are, great coaches who are good recruiters. Again, I'd rather have great recruiters who are good coaches than great coaches who are good recruiters. And his philosophy was a good coach who's a great recruiter, is making a great player even better. A great recruiter is making a good player hopefully up closer to great. Now, in the pros, it's a little bit different because you're not much of a recruiter. Your recruiting is your coordinator and your head coach and your general manager and cap consultant. But AP is bringing in coaches who are great coaches, and he's bringing in those guys who can see, identify, and move forward. I think that's really important. So I wanted to address that because a few people have asked me about concerns, and there are no concerns. All right, let's get to the quarterback position. There are a lot of options for the Raiders that they're looking at, and I want to go over these with you because I think they're very, very good. First of all, is they're looking at to go find another quarterback to compete with Aiden. Do we move up in the draft? Do we stay where we're at and draft a quarterback there? Or do we stay where we're at, draft another position player? I told you about Latham, the right tackle out of Alabama, which, by the way, was getting a ton of attention when CJ led the charge. I'm sorry, CJ, when Champ Kelly led the charge. Do they stick and go with him? Or do they go quarterback, depending on who falls? Or do they wait and pick their quarterback up in later rounds? After the Super Bowl, we're going to spend a lot of time looking at the quarterbacks in this draft. I promise when the time the draft gets here, you are going to be some of the most knowledgeable people on the quarterbacks in this draft. I am going to tell you, I know that Mel Kiper is pounding the drum for Caleb Williams, and that's fine. I like Mel. But Mel sometimes will ride a guy that he predicted before. He'll ride them a little long, in my opinion. It's not a slam on Mel's integrity at all. He's a great man, good guy. It's just an observation. I've told you all along when I have felt when I'm talking to people around the league, I am hearing a lot of people tell me that they think Caleb Williams, that they would not take Caleb Williams early in this draft. I'm hearing it from a lot of people, a ton of people. In fact, I talked to two people yesterday from two different teams, and they asked me, "What do you know?" And I go, "Man, I'll tell you what, I'm hearing a bunch of people jumping off the Caleb Williams ship." And one particular guy who's from a very successful franchise said to me, "So you haven't been talking to us?" I said, "Oh, are you on the Caleb train?" He goes, "We were never on it." He goes, "We don't even have a first round grade on him." And you may remember, I've told you about this guy's franchise before. They believe a first round guy, you have to get his, there isn't 32 dudes. And if you're new to the podcast, a dude is a term in the NFL they use for guys just can't miss. But you've got to get as close, you either got to get a dude or as close to a dude as you can in the first round. Good teams don't waste first round picks. And they go, we wouldn't select him in the first round. We're just concerned. There's too many concerns. I'm not going to get into what, but there's concerns. Okay. But we're going to go through all these quarterbacks with somebody who has a lot of high knowledge, an NFL Super Bowl champion quarterback who now has a service where he evaluates all the draft eligible quarterbacks and disseminates that to the team. We're going to get his perspective. We've never had his perspective before a draft. He's going to join us. We're going to bring in draft experts and talk about a lot of the positions. Another thing I want to tell you is when you go to si.com/NFL/Raiders, we are offering you 2 or 3 nearly every day draft evaluations. Now, the last several drafts, the Raiders have not picked a player. All right, I think it's the last 2, they've not picked a player that we didn't preview for you. And the year before, I think it was just 1 that we hadn't, and it was a late round pick. So we are learning who the Raiders are looking at. We're not writing about players that the Raiders are not interested in. So we're not just writing these for your benefit. If you like to do your own mock drafts, if you like to study the draft as the draft goes on, thinking about who you like, I really would encourage you to look at these draft evaluations. I think you'll find them interesting because if you're so zoned in on the NFL, you may not be watching a bunch of college football. So I really encourage you to keep those out. Aiden Champion and Carter Landis are doing a terrific job for us writing those. So again, so there's the option. Do you move up? Is there a quarterback yet that we think moving up is valuable for? Now, we know that Antonio Pierce has a great relationship with Jaden Daniels. Is he worth moving up for? This is where I can tell you AP is relying on Tom Telesco, and their relationship is new, but it's very good. And this is where he's going to trust Tom to say, hey, I like Jaden. I know you do too. But coach, in my evaluation, being non-biased, because I don't have a personal relationship with him, boy, I think he's worth going up and getting. Or I think we stay and hope he falls to us at 13. Or, I got a second, third round grade, and I don't know what the grade is yet. So don't assume that I'm telling you that's what Telesco's saying. And this is where him and AP are going to work really good together. It's why you have to have that relationship. Again, I go back to last year. Dave Ziegler wanted Stroud, and Josh McDaniels wanted Bryce Young. And I learned it at right after the combine. I learned that. I've shared that story with you ad nauseum. Don't need to share it anymore. So, that's why it's really important. Had they listened to their general manager, the Raiders had already predetermined what the cost of moving up was. So if they had, or later in the process, the Texans were not giving up one, but there was a time when they were, because the Raiders knew exactly what it would cost them to move up. I know that for 100%. I was told that. I was told that at the combine. That, yeah, we know the cost of one and we know the cost of two. So imagine if early in the process they had decided, okay, we want Stroud. They already knew the cost. They could have moved up. But whatever. Josh wanted Bryce Young if Bryce were to have fallen. Okay. And the rest is history. Now, there were a lot of teams that wanted Aiden O'Connell. I know that the Denver Broncos were trying to move up to get Aiden O'Connell when the Raiders took him. There were other teams trying to move up to get Aiden O'Connell. People really liked him. They like his game. So the first decision the Raiders have to make is, do we move up? Do we stay and take a quarterback if they fall to us? Or do we move down? Now, it's going to be interesting to watch. At this point, I can tell you no decisions have been made yet by the Raiders. None. I'm hearing people say, oh, this means this. I can tell you because I asked someone who would know. And that I was told flat out, there is no decision that has been made. None. Now, Telesco is going to do his job. He's going to call around because even if it's not for a quarterback, they need to get a producer. And so Telesco is going to call around and say, what's the cost to move to 1? What's the cost to move to 2? What's the cost? He's going to do that from 1 through 12 because he picks at 13. He's going to know what all the costs are. Now, if you don't pull the trigger quick on a trade, the cost goes up. So let me give you an example. Last year, Dave Ziegler makes the call. He knows what the cost of the pick is if you go to number 1 or number 2. And he knew all of them up to him. He knew what the cost was to go to each one. But as the process went on and got closer to the draft, Carolina wasn't going to trade, neither was Houston. So the cost went up so high that it's no longer available. So the closer you get, the higher the price goes up. So Telesco's going to do his job and know exactly who's available. That's the first option in quarterback. And then you go pick a guy and let him compete with Aiden. You know, this is where I talk about the 1% in social media. We wrote an article last week about Aiden O'Connell's earned the right to compete. No one said the guy was earned the right to keep the starter's job. And just the vitriol of people. Yeah, but he ain't earned the right to be a starter. And people don't read but want to comment, and they just look stupid. That's fine, but 99% don't. They understood exactly what we're saying. This kid's earned the right to compete. Now, you saw Brock Purdy last night. He's not a mobile quarterback, but he was a threat to run. That's part of the game of Aiden O'Connell that has to be developed. Even if he ends up not being your number one quarterback, it still has to be developed. It'll make him more dangerous. So that's the first option is what are they going to do with their draft pick? If I had to say right now, and you have to understand, we're not even done with the Super Bowl. I believed their philosophy was if somebody drops to us, great. But if there's not somebody there that we think with the value of 13, we'll either trade back or stay where we're at. And that's where I thought a Latham came in, a right tackle. But I'm still learning these, and I don't think they know what they want to do. The next option is, do they do a trade? Is there a quarterback out there that they think is tradable for? Is the cost reasonable? Now, you've got Justin Fields with 2 years left on his rookie deal. Okay. Do you go trade for a Justin Fields who's got 2 years left on his rookie deal before you have to pay him big jack to allow him to see if he develops over those last 2 years into a guy worthy of big jack? And then what's his value? Are you willing to trade for him with your second round pick? What about your first? Or do you trade 13 for maybe 2 ones from somebody else lower in the draft and then trade one of the ones to the Bears for Justin Fields? That's an option. That's an option. You got to look at that option. And then you let Fields and O'Connell compete. But a trade is certainly a viable option, and they're looking at everything right now. This is where Champ Kelly's value is so enormous because Telesco's trying to learn the roster he has right now. He's, obviously he's overseeing the scouting, but he knows what Champ can do. He values Champ and Champ's staff. Well, they're his staff now, but you know what I mean. And those guys are also able to look at potential trades and bring information to Telesco as he's trying to let all this go through his mind. A lot of good stuff looking to hear in the trade. Then there's free agency. Okay. There's a Baker Mayfield that you can bring in to compete with Aiden. You say, well, I don't want Baker. Okay. I'm only using it as an example. There is a Kirk Cousins who would bring an element to this team. There's a lot of people that believe quarterback play can push this team over the top. There's a lot of people that believe that Aiden O'Connell is the one who will improve his quarterback play and get him there. Now, we're going to talk about Aiden in a minute. But either way, those are some options. Are there some free agents? Jacoby Brissett. Who knows? But this is one of the options. And then lastly, I'm talking about the quarterback. Still have more I want to talk about the Raiders. Is Aiden O'Connell. You take a long, hard look at Aiden O'Connell. Okay. And if you make the decision, this is our guy. then you still look at bringing a veteran in, and you still better look at drafting a rookie. You better, for your 3 spots. You're always developing a young quarterback. Even if you got one, you still got one, and then you bring in a leader. Those are all part of the dynamic of the quarterback situation right now. That's all the dynamic that there is. You know, do you go trade for a guy, let him compete with Aiden? Do you go draft a guy, let him compete with Aiden? Do you keep Aiden as your number one and go get somebody, let them back him up and compete? Yeah, that's an option too. Do you go the free agent route? And then the last option is, what if Telesco says, I don't believe in Aiden? There's a market for him. I've heard people say, we should trade Aiden for a 1. Well, if you think Aiden's worth a 1, then why do you want to trade him? If you're the Raider team that got him and you don't believe in him, why would you expect someone else would put a value of a 1 on him? So that's the 5 options that the Raiders are really looking at with quarterback. And again, I can reiterate, as of, I think it was yesterday, there's no concrete decision that has been made heretofore. Now, I want to end with this today because we are talking about last night's Lions game. Dan Campbell is not a good coach. I think he's a great coach. They won 3 games his first year. They won 8 or 9 his second, and then 12 this year, and went to the NFC Conference Championship game. Heard a lot of people last night ripping them. Well, the rah-rah ran out of gas. Well, it may have run out of gas, but he ran out of gas where 28 other teams would have loved to have run out of gas. Expand your mind to understand the game. But he got hurt with young coordinators on both sides. There wasn't a ton of experienced guys around to help with adjustments. Now, in fairness, that has not been an Achilles heel with the Lions all year. They have made good adjustments. I'm thinking of several games in particular where they made adjustments. But that is where the people ripping AP for having Marvin Lewis and Tom Coughlin are, to me, so far out in left field. You're playing cricket while everyone else is playing football. You want those guys around you with institutional knowledge of the game. For example, Sean Payton and Bill Belichick, Andy Reid, really good coaches. Nobody doubts that. Okay. I don't think Sean Payton is as good as Andy Reid and Bill Belichick at all. I don't think he's in their group at all. But he has been around a long time, and he has won a lot of football games, and I think he's a good coach. I don't think he's great. I don't think he's elite. I think he's a good coach. You can bring in a lot of young guys, and I think it's important to have young guys on your staff anyways. But you can bring in more than maybe an AP or a Dan Campbell because you have enough institutional knowledge and you understand the way the game is run that you don't necessarily need that. AP is smart enough to know that what he doesn't know, he needs guys around him that he trusts, who, when they speak, he listens. I think something that you saw yesterday was the Lions came out, punched San Francisco in the face, right in the kisser. But at halftime, you saw the better staff, and I don't know that I would say better staff. You saw the more experienced staff make adjustments, and then the Lions were not able to adjust in game. A lot of games are won with second half adjustments. And we're not talking about throwing out your offense and redoing or throw. It's just little adjustments. I was once talking with a very famous NFL head coach, and it was off the record at the combine. I don't think he would mind me telling you, but I'm not going to out of respect for him. And I said to him, what do you think is one of the biggest misconceptions of the game of football? And he said, halftime adjustments. Fans are always talking about halftime adjustments. He goes, and I said, well, you're the one that usually gets the credit for making them. He goes, yeah, but he goes, they're not as big as fans think. Sometimes it's a little adjustment. I thought that was really powerful. Years ago, I had an AMC Concord car, and it was my first car, and it had been my mom's, and my mom gave it to me in my car, and I thought the engine was terrible. So I took it to a buddy of mine, a young kid. I was young. I was 18, 19 years old, and he was 19 years old, and he goes, oh man, your engine's bad. You need an engine. Went home, and my dad's like, what's wrong? I said, my engine. Yeah, I was 18 years old. I'm away to college. And he goes, son, I took great care of that car when it was your mom's. There's no bad engine on there. So he has the car towed to a mechanic. It's an old beat up garage. Guy's name was Bill Latimer. Great guy. It was my dad's mechanic. Bill looked down there. What's the problem we got here? I said, well, they told me I need a new engine. You don't need a new engine. I said, well, how do you know? He goes, because I did all the work on that engine. I'm your mom and dad's mechanic. Why didn't you bring it to me? Kid, to a kid. He goes, oh, I don't know what it is, but I can tell you right now, boy, it ain't an engine if it's an engine. And this was like a month after I got it from my mom. I'll put it in for free. I said, okay. We're there. And him and my dad are shooting the breeze, drinking coffee while he's looking at the car and all that. And he comes over and sits down. Y'all won't play cards? So I'm like, what is going on? So we're playing. 20 minutes later, guy shows up. Mr. Latimer walks over, shuts the hood. You're fine. I said, what do you? He said, $2. I said, what? He goes, $2. I said, what? Yeah. He said, normally I'd charge you more for my time. He goes, but I got to play cards with your dad. He goes, the part was 84 cents. I'll never forget that. Because I'm like, 84 cents? He goes, yeah. Now, I don't know the name of I don't know if it was a PCV valve, because a PVC is a plastic pipe. PCV valve just needed to be changed, 84 cents. He looked at me and said, you should probably always pick a mechanic with some gray hair. Okay. I think that's a principle that, and I'll never forget my dad when we got in the car that day. He said, son, that's a good principle about life. You know, people with gray hair don't know it all, but they do know a lot. They failed a lot. And I thought that was a great principle. And I think it's the same way. AP's putting some gray hair on his staff because he understands exactly what the value is. And you should too. You should too. Understand and appreciate the way that he's assembling the staff. I think he's doing a terrific job. All right. Remember, I'm Hondo Carpenter from Sports Illustrated's Fan Nation, Las Vegas Raiders Insider podcast, part of the Fans First Sports Network. Follow me on Instagram at Hondo SR. Follow me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Hondo Carpenter. You can also follow me on LinkedIn, Hondo Carpenter. And additionally, go to si.com/NFL/Raiders for all of our articles. Also, while you're there, you can go to the top right corner, click on newsletter. Sign up. We do not spam you. You only get 3 emails a week, and we don't sell your information. But it's where you can grab, we'll send you some of our best articles so you'll never miss any more Raider information again. It's a great service. It's free, but keeps you in the loop. You want to be the Raider fan with the most knowledge, go to si.com/NFL/Raiders. Click on newsletter, make sure you sign up. Again, thank you all for tuning in, and thank you for all the very kind words to my wife. Other than telling her she could have married better, and I agree, by the way. It was fun, and I appreciate you. You say whatever you want about me, but I was very glad that you were kind to my wife and family, and that's what you expect from Raider Nation. That's kind of people that you are. So from all of us here at Sports Illustrated's Fan Nation, Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast, part of the Fans First Sports Network. Remember, thanks for watching us. Hope that you have a great day. God bless you. And we'll see you all again tomorrow.